4-hour English project, we're doing Young Adult Literature by Natalie Javante, Violet House, and Daniela Molina.
What is literature? Is a question that people ask worldwide. Literature can be simplified and described in many ways. What we see as literature is any kind of written text that reaches out information, history, and sometimes even just creativity of an author. Why do people create? People create things based on many reasons. Creations mainly made by authors are to pass on life lessons, history, facts, and sometimes to even just express emotions and many more. Overall, creations make us have acknowledgement about many things. Creating literature is very important, especially literature of all kinds. It allows everyone to try out different genres and expand their choice of reading. Young adult books don't seem to get enough credit these days, but we believe that they should. Most young adults like our age or higher aren't that interested in reading, and as we all may know, reading is highly important. Speaking for ourselves and a few others, I know that young adult literature easily drags in attention to read, so that's why we think that young adult is important.
When and how did young adult literature start? According to CNN, the first ever young adult book was published in 1942 during World War I by a woman named Maureen Dalley. She wrote a romance novel explicitly for teenagers, and during this period of time, that was a rare thing to see. At the time, the term young adult wasn't used to categorize these type of books. When this first book came out, everyone just identified this type of writing as something teenagers could read until the 1960s. The Young Adult Library Services Association categorized these types of books as young adult to recognize kids from the age of 12 to 18.
An article by Kathy Latro informs us that young adult literature is literature read by many people, but is most favored by grades from 7 through 12. Besides from all the wonderful genres in the world, young adult literature has been a great hit and only took up about a year. In 1967, teenagers have been beyond the point of simple plots like about racism, Great Depression, or World War II, but now they have presented the culturally diverse and socially complex of our new world and turned it into a whole new dimension for them in books. The three most thrilling books that have been started it all was Hinton, The Outsiders, Anne Heads, Mr. and Mrs. Bojo Jonas, and Robert Lipsey, The Contender. These kind of books have not just changed its basic style, but has been trying to get young adult readers' attention by making books seem connected with their emotions and imagination.
Just like with every genre, young adult seems to change over time. Young adult changes from serious and sometimes factual literature reading to more of a typical teenage high schooler drama laid-back reading.
A great example of a young adult writer who tends to reach out to a youthful audience through emotions is Susan Hinton. Susan Hinton is usually known by the book The Outsiders that she wrote when she was 16. The Outsiders is one of the earliest books that was published in 1993. An article by Danita Smith states that Susan Hinton wrote The Outsiders when her father was diagnosed with a tumor and he was dying. She said that it was inspired by injustices perpetrated against her greaser friends by the Sox. Phyllis Barkus Goldman states that this novel centers around boys who struggle between their emotions and their public image.
The Giver by Lois Lowry is probably a book that many of you guys are familiar with. The Giver is another book that focuses on young adult and also as well a bit of fiction. It was published in 1993. An article written by Nita Ulabai states that Lois Lowry was inspired to write the book once her father went to a nursing home, since he didn't have the ability to remember things. So she was inspired to write about people who had found a way to manipulate human memory so that they wouldn't have to remember anything bad. Overall, The Giver is a really good book for a young adult audience. Many teachers tend to teach it around 7th and 8th grade because they know that we could make relations and connections to it.
The article by Danita Smith states a little bit of how the writer Susan Hinton's life was. It says that growing up she was a tomboy, and also that when she was little her parents were really harsh on her. Growing up she wrote The Outsiders, which was her first book and was a really good success, just like we said before. But after that she entered depression and writer's block, but thankfully a classmate in her biology class in the University of Tulsa helped her overcome that, and after that she successfully began to write. What makes Susan Hinton such a good writer, especially in terms of writing adult books, is that growing up, it seems like she had a lot of bad situations that motivated her to maybe reach out to a young adult audience through books with characters to have happy, perfect lives, or also with characters that have bad lives, but are able to overcome and fix them with time.
Both The Outsiders and The Giver are serious literature books that were published in the time set of 1993. They were both inspired by at-home situations, and knowing that, we could tell that the authors were very much alike then. Both of these books, among others published in this time, have more of a deeper and serious story behind them with morals. But like we mentioned earlier, with time, it changed into more of a laid-back reading. This is a book that is a great example of young adult literature today. The Fault in Our Stars is a popular young adult book that a lot of young people died to read. Like most young adult books now, the book is laid back reading to just enjoy and expand your mind on something less complex. An article written by Sarah Wilkemerson explains the book in a few sentences. It implies that the book is a love story filled with joy and overall filled with a lot of life. Overall, it is a book that interested a lot of young adults to read, possibly even the ones who barely read, which is great. An article by Hal Bodecker tells us that John Green was bullied when he was little. John Green says that he wouldn't be the writer he is if he didn't grow up where he did. It also tells us that because of him being bullied and being antisocial, it influenced the way he writes, and it changed his perspective of the world. By knowing that about John Green, it tells us and lets us know that he is a laid-back author who uses his history as an influence in his writing.